These two ladies behind me here in my virtual background, if you are watching on YouTube, Naomi and Sasha Banks. By now, y'all know the story. Y'all know what happened this past Monday Night Raw in Virginia. Naomi and Sasha Banks were scheduled to compete in a six-pack challenge for the new number one contendership for the Raw Women's Championship. The match was also supposed to involve Nikki ASH, Doudrop, Becky Lynch, and Asuka. Unfortunately, right as Raw hit the air, or maybe right before Raw hit the air, Naomi and Sasha Banks decided to go into editorial relations. John Laurinaitis' office will relinquish the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships and walk out of the company. And this past Friday night on SmackDown, Michael Cole issued a statement saying that Naomi and Sasha Banks let the entire WWE universe down. They are no longer the Women's Tag Team Champions, and there will be a tournament to crown the new champions. Obviously, there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot to address. So I'm just going to be spewing my initial thoughts and then what I think is going to lead, and kind of just my thoughts all over the place here on this situation. Initially, I did not feel like this was a work, which would, of course, be pretend. I thought it was a shoot. If you guys have never heard the term in wrestling, work or shoot, essentially a work is a part of the storyline. A shoot is something real going on, either behind the scenes or on camera. I felt like this was more of a shoot. WWE typically doesn't go out of their way to make press releases. They did so, obviously, after the Naomi and Sasha Banks incident on Raw, saying that they were disappointed they could not deliver the main event, even though the WWE card is subject to change at all times. I did think their statement about Naomi and Sasha Banks not wanting to work with two individuals in the match, I thought that was nonsense. I thought that was a way to kind of get to the Becky and Asuka one-on-one match instead of just making it a fatal four-way. I don't know why they made that decision, but I thought that part of the statement was BS. I understand where Naomi and Sasha Banks were coming from, right? They are not treated well as the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. But let's be honest here, and I said this when I previewed WrestleMania 38 Night 2, when they were in that fatal four-way, with Natalya and Shayna Baszler and Carmella and Zelina Vega, Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley for the Women's Tag Team Championships. Even when the Tag Team Championships were created in 2019, and mostly it was because Sasha Banks and Bayley wanted to become the first ever Women's Tag Team Champions. They really had, no legitimate tag teams in the division. They've all been made up teams from the beginning. The reign that Sasha Banks and Bayley had in 2020 made the tag team titles a little bit legitimate. I thought Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler had a pretty good reign with the tag team championships, but even teams like, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross at the time, Asuka and Kairi Sane, the Kabuki Warriors, these teams that have held the tag team championships, Carmella and Zelina Vega, the tag team championships have really meant nothing since they've been there, and I didn't think WWE had the teams to make those championships relevant. I thought it was a bad idea to bring the championships there in the first place. What I do think WWE needs is I do think they do need a secondary women's championship, but I think it needs to be a secondary women's singles championship, a women's intercontinental, or a women's United States championship. I don't know if they have enough women's superstars to make one for Raw and one for SmackDown. I think one belt that kind of floats across both brands would be good, because I think it's a lot easier to establish yourself as a singles competitor first rather than a tag team. And then when you start getting more women and you create tag teams, that's where you can kind of create the division. But I think a secondary women's championship, a kind of mid-card women's championship, is necessary. On the topic of Naomi, trying to pin Sasha Banks, I understand where that concern comes in. You don't want to pin your tag team partner. They definitely could have changed up the finish. Naomi could have pinned Nikki ASH or Doudrop or somebody like that. But I don't understand why Naomi and Sasha Banks did not want to compete one-on-one for a singles championship in WWE. Again, I understand that they are the women's tag team champions. They're supposed to be focusing on the tag team goal. But at the same time, we've seen many and multiple superstars, men and women, throughout history have tag team championships and go for a singles championship. We saw Bayley and Sasha Banks do that when Bayley had the SmackDown Women's Championship and the Women's Tag Team Championships. Sasha Banks had the Raw Women's Championship and the Tag Team Championships. So I do not really see, the issue with that. I think Bianca Belair and Naomi, two generational, African-American talent in that ring, something that WWE has rarely done, and again, in trying to promote diversity and culture in their community. We had the first ever Black women's main event at WrestleMania 37 between Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. I don't think WWE has really had two legit stars, though, in the women's division with Naomi and Bianca Belair go one-on-one at a non-Big Four pay-per-view. I thought that'd be an excellent opportunity. I've always wanted to see Naomi go one-on-one with the EST of WWE, and I don't mind that plan for Hell in a Cell, nor did I mind the plan of them doing Sasha Banks versus Ronda Rousey for the SmackDown Women's Championship. I know we saw the match at Royal Rumble 2019. That was a different boss. That was a different blueprint. At the time, she wasn't even the blueprint. She had purple hair instead of blue hair. This is a more confident Sasha Banks. We know Sasha Banks is a star. And listen, eventually we know we're going to get a rematch between Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship. We know we're going to get a rematch between Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair more than likely for the SmackDown Women's Championship. So yes, Naomi was not going to win the Raw Women's Championship. Sasha Banks was not going to win the SmackDown Women's Championship. But you know what? I think that these two ladies could have been more professional. I think they could have put on a phenomenal match. It would have made me care about the story on a pay-per-view that we talked about, right? WrestleMania Backlash, we said it was not much stakes going into it, and ended up being an excellent show. I think the same thing could have been said here. Naomi and Bianca Belair could have put on a banger of a match. Sasha Banks and Ronda Rousey could have put on a banger of a match. I don't understand where they're coming from. I don't think it was worth a walkout at all. And if it is true, I think that is a bad look for Naomi and Sasha Banks. For the record, I don't blame what Michael Cole said on SmackDown. I don't blame what WWE said on commentary. I think part of that is because I do think somewhat this is a work. They did not mention CM Punk when he quit the company. They would have used their real names, I feel like. And the fact that they keep bringing it up and now they're having a tournament to crown the new Women's Tag Team Champions, who knows? Maybe it's a way to get Naomi and Sasha Banks into the Bloodline. There just seems to be a lot of suspicious here. The fact that they wrote up a press release. The fact that, again, they keep mentioning it on commentary. The fact they did strip them of the tag team championships. And the fact there is now a tournament plan to crown new tag team champions that quickly. It doesn't seem like a solution usually comes that quickly in WWE. This does seem like a work. And if Naomi and Sasha Banks does return at LNSL, I would not be surprised. Again, I understand why they did it. I can see the viewpoint of them trying to make the Women's Tag Team Championships prestigious, but it doesn't matter what tag team you put them in with, in my opinion. It's not going to be prestigious because WWE just does not have the woman to fill out a full tag team division. Quite personally, I am disappointed a little bit in Sasha Banks and Naomi, and I don't think that they should have walked out, and I don't have a problem with what Michael Cole said on Friday Night SmackDown this past Friday. Well, speaking of this past Friday, folks, the Bloodline, Roman Reigns, Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso, the Bloodline now hold all the gold in WWE. And I said last week on this podcast, I said that I thought RK Bro should have went over against the Usos in this match. I think that they should have went with the storyline that Roman Reigns is the only one that can hold double championships in WWE, not the Usos. And RK Bro is so hot right now that I think that crowd would have exploded if they would have won both sets of tag team championships. However, that's not the direction WWE went. And now, as I said, the Bloodline do run the yard and they do hold all the gold in WWE. My question is, and it's always been my question from the start with as long of a reign as Roman Reigns has had, he has taken out everybody from Braun Strowman to The Fiend to Jey Uso to Drew McIntyre to Kevin Owens to Daniel Bryan to Edge to Cesaro to John Cena to Finn Balor to Brock Lesnar to Seth Rollins to Shinsuke Nakamura. I mean, you can just go on and on and on. The amount of superstars Roman Reigns is taking out on the SmackDown roster. Likewise for the Usos. They have ran through the Mysterios, the Viking Raiders, the New Day, Rick Boogs and Shinsuke Nakamura, Los Lotharios, Alpha Academy, and now RK Bro, you name it. This team, the Bloodline, they may be, as Pat McAfee said on commentary on SmackDown, the most dominating faction in WWE. And the question here is, what's next? Roman Reigns will not have a championship defense, till Money in the Bank, it sounds like. And the question here is, do the Usos and RK Bro go at it again inside Hell in a Cell? We already have one Hell in a Cell match between Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, which I think will be an excellent contest. Will this lead to a Hell in a Cell match? And can these Usos finally win a match? I think that is the next trajectory to this story. Can the Usos finally win a match without Roman's interference? Because, of course, Roman did interfere last night, and then the Bloodline made little kids cry. Absolute great heel work at the end of the show Friday night, taking out RK Bro. RK Bro is going to want revenge. And, man, the Bloodline now, it's like, how much more can they do? I mentioned all the opponents they took out. The question is, who's next for them? And now, how do you break up RK Bro? I mentioned in the last couple of weeks, I think that Riddle should turn on Randy Orton when the time is eventually right. Though I don't know if the time is right. If you want to do SummerSlam, if you want to do it after SummerSlam, if you want to go and wait a little longer till next year's WrestleMania. Randy Orton specifically right now is so hot. The crowd is in love with him. They're chanting Randy every time they come out. Not necessarily Riddle, but they want Randy. And Randy's getting all the big pops. And people love RK Bro. That I think eventually it would be a good story if Riddle gets jealous of all the love that Randy Orton has. Who knows? Maybe Randy takes the WWE Championship off of Roman Reigns. We'll see if Roman Reigns is still the Universal and WWE Champion by the time we get to The Rock at WrestleMania 39 in Hollywood. There's a lot of variables going on. I will say that. There's a lot of different directions, and I think that is good. I think WWE has built some really good direction for the Bloodline, and I think that it will be good for them going into the future. But yeah, for right now, man, the Bloodline rule this yard.